Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on the evolution of industrial wireless networking, where we will discuss the key factors that drive wireless interconnectivity in OT networks and the advancements of wireless solutions in Wi-Fi and cellular technologies. Joining us today is Moxa's product marketing manager for networking and cybersecurity, Marty Wachi. Marty, he has over 20 years of experience leading product marketing and product management teams at Apple Computer, Bay Networks, Nortel Networks, and Cisco, just to name a few. And he's launched over 1,200 products worldwide, including routers, switches, wireless access points, cellular routers, and more. I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping items before we jump into our presentation. The webinar is 45 minutes, including time for questions at the end. If you'd like to submit questions, please ask away within the Q&A function, and we will try to answer them at the end of the presentation. There will also be a survey at the end of the webinar if you'd like to give your feedback on the presentation. And you will also see the occasional poll question pop up on your screen. Please feel free to submit your answers when you see them appear. The recording, it will be shared, so you can go back and watch the webinar on demand. And with that in mind, I'll pass it off to Marty to kick off our webinar on the evolution of industrial wireless networking.
Hey, thanks, James, and thank you all for joining us. Got a bunch of, I think, interesting topics. Hopefully you guys will find them interesting as well. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the big factors that we've been seeing coming down the pipe that I think is driving some of the wireless interconnectivity for OT networks. Talk a little bit about how some of the wireless solutions that we have evolved in terms of better security, reliability, and scale, which then translates into some of the use cases that we'll spend probably the majority of the time covering. We won't cover all of them, but these will be kind of some of the major ones. And what you'll see is there's overlap actually between some of the use cases depending on the technology. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So before we get started, I think just to kind of baseline kind of where everybody's at today and kind of what you're interested in. James, if you can put up the poll question here, what we'd like to know is, do you use some form of wireless technology right now for connecting of your OT devices, or are you just primarily just a wired infrastructure? So if you guys could provide us some feedback there, just be interested to see what the breakdown is of everybody that's on the call today. All right, so it looks like we've got actually a good number of you that don't have any wireless and a big percentage of you that do. All right, good. All right, well, hopefully we can help identify for those of you that aren't using wireless some use cases that might help you and why. So let's keep going here. I've got a lot of content to go through. So just really quickly about Moxa, for those of you that may not know who we are, maybe this is the first webinar that you've attended. We're a private Taiwanese company. We've been around for about 35 plus years. We focus on enabling really critical industrial communication for critical infrastructure. You can see kind of the 6 major verticals that we play in today: rail, manufacturing, power, marine, oil and gas, and transportation. One of the things that I think is fairly unique about our company is, unlike a lot of our other OT competitors, this is the only thing that the whole company focuses on, is this industrial communication, critical infrastructure stuff. Whereas a lot of our competition, yes, they do have products in this area, but this is not their entire focus, where everybody in the company wakes up every morning and this is what they're focused on. The other thing I think that is good to point out here is, because we're in all these different environments, we get a lot of visibility into best practices and things, and you'll see some of that with some of the overlap in use cases and technology that we can bring to some of the other verticals. The other thing that I wanted to point out before we get too far into the presentation is just kind of where Moxa's position. I spent a lot of time at Cisco, as Jim mentioned in the bio here. What I would say is that Cisco has a lot of products on the IT side of things, from the data center all the way out to the edge. Them and a lot of other networking enterprise companies do have very credible OT networking solutions, and we do see some overlap here in the OT side of that network. But where we really, I think, are unique and have some good strengths are really on the OT edge of the network. And this is where the majority of our wireless and security products play. We're not trying to compete head to head at some of the core infrastructure pieces with a company like Cisco or Aruba or others. So just keep that in mind as we're going through this. All right, so let's talk about some of the factors. So these two people, hopefully you guys recognize, that the CEOs of Microsoft and NVIDIA, a lot smarter and richer than me. I think between the two of them, their companies represent about $4 trillion in market cap. And in early December, they said, hey, industrial companies are really going to benefit the most from AI. And I believe this is going to be one of the drivers, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So people a lot smarter than me are saying that, hey, the industries that we're in, the industries that you guys as customers may represent, there's a lot to be gained here from AI. The other piece of news that I wanted to reference that came out towards the end of the year was as it relates to AT&T and this whole push that they have for open RAN networks. They're going to spend a lot of money building out and updating their networks, and they've got $14 billion that they're going to go and invest and try and make 70% of their network traffic flow across open capable platforms, because I think they want to gain experience in these open RAN systems. And that's going to be another driver that we'll talk about with some of the private 5G. So keep an eye on that. Some of you may have seen me talk about this slide in some other webinars. I feel like I could probably do a webinar just on thoughts on this, but really wanted to point out three things here. So digitization, this has been going on for a long time in OT networks. This is nothing new. Those of you that have been involved with this, again, it's kind of preaching to the choir. Problems increase with scale, management, patch updates, life cycle, all those things. Another factor, though, the artificial intelligence that we're just talking about. How is this going to impact our networks, our customers' networks? You can see that there are a lot of smart people are predicting industrial networks are going to benefit the most. So when you think about how AI is going to play in all of this, one of the lenses to look at from a networking perspective is really almost everything has to be connected. Right now, not everything has to be connected from an OT perspective for it to work. If you want to take advantage of AI, a lot of these things are going to have to be connected. You're going to want to collect data. This creates a whole nother set of problems, which we're not going to get into today, nor am I going to talk about the financial and regulatory issues. What I did want to point out, though, is the things at the top here, right? One of the big drivers for wireless and the different forms that we're talking about is this idea everything has to be connected now, whether that's digitization or the drive for artificial intelligence. These have other ramifications when it comes to visibility and security, which are kind of out of scope for today, but we may take up in some of the security webinars in the future. If that's something that you'd like to see us talk more about, definitely drop us a note in the Q&A section, and we'll try and either answer it today or maybe even do a whole webinar on it. But today what we're going to focus on is this whole everything needs to be connected. And I think with the wireless options that we're going to talk about today from Moxa, give you a lot of other options for connecting these hard to connect devices that you have in your networks or in your customer networks. So with that, let's talk about like how some of this stuff is evolving and what some of it looks like. So this is something that I use internally, and I thought this would be good for this webinar, just from a technical perspective, looking at comparing the different technologies. So you've got Wi-Fi, public, private, 5G here in the other columns. I think the things that I would point out here is if you're looking at speed, data capacity, all of those things, Wi-Fi is always going to win hands down. When you start to run into situations where capacity and to a lesser extent latency come into play, since Wi-Fi 7 is not widely available yet for industrial networks, this is where the cellular, both public and private networks come into play in terms of cell capacity, latency, but it does come at a cost. So both your initial investment and potentially if you're using public cellular, your OpEx costs go up. So this is one slide that I'd ask you guys to kind of take a mental note of, because we're going to come back to some of these concepts here, because a lot of what drives public and private 5G deployments today isn't necessarily the technology per se. It's, do you have a business case, an ROI that can benefit from the higher capacity, the lower latency to offset some of the initial deployment costs? If what we're seeing is that if you can't come up with business cases to justify some of the improvements in latency or capacity, it's harder to justify the deployment as using a 5G public or private solution. So just kind of keep that in mind as we're going through this. With respect to Wi-Fi, there's still a lot of older 11N technology that's out there running WPA2. There's a lot of security vulnerabilities there. Obviously, we're trying to get most of our customers to move to WPA3 or better solutions from a security perspective. So that's another enhancement that's been made. Not so recent, but recently enough that we do have a lot of customers that probably should look at migrating. On the public and private 5G side of things, or LTE side, this is just a comparison of 4G versus 5G. Again, better data rates, better mobility in terms of speed, latency improves quite a bit, density for connections. You can see, 5G improves in a lot of different ways. So when you look at this chart here around why 5G, and this is true for essentially both public and private for the most part, you can see the comparisons up here, but the two big takeaways really are you're going to have much improved latency. So you've got applications that really demand real-time monitoring feedback for safety or other AI types of applications that we've seen. That may be an important consideration. Data rate is important from a density perspective. Wi-Fi is still going to be faster in a lot of cases, but not at high density, right? So if you've got a lot of stuff in a small area, 5G, private 5G may be a better technology. This is not intended to be a 5G primer, due to time, but there are different aspects here of the network. We have the Moxa solutions here that think of it as connecting to these open RAN systems that AT&T was talking about. As far as drivers, this open RAN system ecosystem here that you see is what's really driving down the operational cost of deploying 5G networks. So this is something that, as you look at this as options for yourself or your customers, just keep this in mind, because I think in all of our POC deployments across the world right now, I think all 25 or 30 of them involve some type of open RAN system, as opposed to your traditional, Ericsson, Nokia type of cell towers, and then they connect back to the central network. Again, this is not going to be a detailed thing on 5G, but again, what we're seeing here is there's kind of like 3 deployment use cases. So the first one here is where, the enterprise basically owns everything. So the RAN systems all the way back, so the whole network on the 5G side deployed on-prem is owned by the enterprise. It's very costly from a initial CapEx outlay, and then it connects back to a central location. I'm going to jump down to the bottom, which is kind of the opposite. This is where, the enterprise owns almost nothing and really just rents the network from the existing cellular providers locally, and basically is time slicing on their network and operates it like a private 5G network. So there's not a big CapEx investment, but as you can imagine, there's a big OpEx investment from ongoing data. So what we're seeing here for our deployments that we're seeing for POCs, the sweet spot is this in the middle. where you're deploying an Open RAN system for the base tower, leveraging the carrier networks for the back end, where you're, deploying, you're not trying to light up a whole city. This is just trying to cover a manufacturing floor or something like that. So you don't need very many cell towers to be able to support this. And this is one of the use cases that we're seeing quite a bit actually right now. So we'll talk about that as we go through this a little bit more. These are some of the advantages. We've got dedicated spectrum in Japan, Taiwan, and the US. Europe is still a little bit behind there. There's the Open RAN part that I was talking about before, which is helping drive down cost. And then you've got standards that are helping us kind of get everybody on the same page here. So those are a lot of the factors that are kind of the base of what I'm going to talk about from some of the use cases here. Again, if you'd be interested in kind of a more detailed explanation of private 5G, or like to see us do a more in-depth webinar or white paper, definitely drop that maybe in the Q&A section. And we definitely can see about trying to do that in the future. Okay, so I'm going to move on here in the interest of time to try and go through some of the use cases, because I think this is what probably you came to hear from us about. So let's start with Wi-Fi. So we've got our new Wi-Fi 5 products, indoor, outdoor, and clients that are 62443 certified. They have some of the new security enhancements for WPA3 that we were talking about. So if any of you are on some of the older technology that's WPA2, you can see there's definitely some security vulnerabilities that you're exposed to. But then beyond that, we also did some other things in terms of enhancing the security, secure boot, signed images, things like that, to make it more secure. So when we look at some of the use cases for Wi-Fi, material handling comes to mind. So you can see you've got these like little robots running around your facility. So that's what this section down here is. You've got all your different material handling, robotic stuff with an Ethernet switch connecting them with a Wi-Fi client. And then you've got access points running through the plant floor that allows you to kind of move things around, connect to the control systems and navigation, supervisory systems. You will see architecturally that this is also similar to some of the private 5G deployments that we're seeing. So this is a case where, this could be either Wi-Fi or 5G. Another area that we see is mining in oil and gas, where you've got this remote controlled machinery, or even machinery that's just exposed in kind of ruggedized environments where, these can be either the trucks that you see here, or in oil and gas, they may be like frac trucks or something. In this case, you've got all the APs connected via Ethernet, providing that connectivity throughout this area. Again, this could be a 5G type of deployment. In the future, one of the things that we have, and we'll be doing an update on, I think later this year, is we're going to be introducing mesh to our wireless APs for the Wi-Fi 5 products. This will allow you to connect these APs without even this Ethernet wire going through here for, again, mining in oil and gas. So if any of you are interested in that, we do actually have the fully functioned beta version of the software available. So just drop us a note again in the Q&A, and we can follow up with you to make that available to you if it's something you're interested in. Medical. So this is kind of similar a little bit to AMRs, but they're not being controlled or anything. But again, you've got these mobile devices doing different medical things in very noisy EM environments, sometimes even with some of the high oxygen environmental types of things, where you're wanting to get some of this information back. We're seeing a lot of this in a lot of different parts of the world, as again, everybody's trying to digitize everything. Another example is in transportation. So again, this could be, in this example is transportation, but you could see something similar maybe in some of the oil and gas as well. So here you've got these buses that have all these cameras and sensors and other things, and VR recording all this stuff as they run around the city. As they start to come back into their station, They connect to the Wi-Fi network. All the stuff gets offloaded and uploaded back to central command here. So they're trying to do this as quickly as possible in a secure manner. Again, similar to some of the data collection applications that we see in some other industries as well. So those are some of the really common use cases where we're seeing some of our Wi-Fi products deployed. Our new CCG 1500 series is our private 5G gateway that came out at the end of last year that were in proof of concept trials globally. It basically has a serial Modbus capable interface as well as kind of a built-in router for Ethernet to 5G conversion. It's dual SIM, high temp, and supports the band N48 for the US. So some of the applications that we're seeing here is this kind of smart manufacturing, factory automation type of environment, where again, you see that AI thing come up, where you're trying to collect the data in real time, process it around the plant floor for some of the new plants that are going up, especially with all of the semiconductor investment that we're seeing. We've seen some customers actually look to this as an effective cost alternative to not running any wires and not running any cable plants throughout their facility. So there's a lot of things that this enables from a capabilities perspective, but keep in mind, again, one of the things here was the ROI component. Can you make an ROI? Does your application benefit from real-time low latency? In this case, you may also have cost savings from initial not having to run cable everywhere. So that helps offset the cost and justify, going ahead and putting something like a Open RAN environment into your manufacturing facility. Smart factory is just kind of a variation on this. So again, you've got your AGVs, AMRs running around. Similarly, you may have some other devices that are already networked, but maybe not 5G capable. So you'll attach that to one of these CCG gateways and make it 5G capable to be able to take advantage of the infrastructure. This is a very new environment for us. So again, there's probably a plethora of other use cases. I'd be interested in knowing if you guys are seeing other ones that your customers are asking for, or if you do have questions about this, definitely drop it in the Q&A and we'll try and address that or follow up with you at the end of the session. Okay, so our public LTE solutions involve our on-cell line of products. So we've got basically two. We've got kind of a low-powered on-cell 3120, and then our new on-cell G4302. This is a higher bandwidth version. Think of it as kind of like our traditional EDR industrial firewall, but with LTE support. So a lot of good things here. So let's go through some of the examples here. So you might do some remote environmental monitoring and sensor collection. So this is using just the public LTE infrastructure to be able to connect all of these different things. So again, sensors, energy, water and power types of applications we see for monitoring. Another one we see in ITS, so smart lighting and traffic control, smart city applications, where again, you're trying to connect some hard to connect things, probably low data in a lot of cases in terms of traffic. So, public cellular is a good option here. Again, seeing some of our on-cell products used in this case. Another use case would be some of the other ones that we just talked about, where maybe you're using Wi-Fi or wired or something else, and you're looking at trying to have another wireless backup option. So this would be a way to provide connectivity in case your wired connection goes down or there's an emergency. So you still have that connectivity and high availability uptime. We are seeing this for a lot of energy applications, critical power, and medical and other use cases for this application. Another one that we see for some of the public cellular is with vehicle management, vehicle communication. So in this particular example, it's a ship, but this also could be similar to like the bus example, where you're not trying to offload, a ton of video. It may just be more lower bandwidth data. So in this case, ship comes into a different port in different cities, and it's able to then offload some of that monitoring information. Again, you could do this for some of the bus or taxi types of services as well within the city. Probably not as good for if it's like a high data application, like trying to offload video. But this is another application that we see for public cellular. Okay, so we've seen this before in I think every single use case. Wi-Fi, private 5G, we're starting to see this as well, and now public. So a lot of your mining applications, a lot of your oil and gas, frac truck types of applications, you'll see a combination of Wi-Fi, public cellular, private cellular starting to creep up. This one is just an example of, we do have some mining customers that are using public cellular networks for being able to do different mining control applications in mines. But obviously for some of the remote mines, they don't have public cellular, so they're also starting to look at private cellular. So this is one of the use cases where there's a lot of different ways to kind of skin this cat. So it really just depends on what the environment looks like, what some of the costs for deployment and things like that. So that covers like the major use cases that we've seen. Is there any other use cases that you're seeing that you'd like us maybe to cover in the future? Again, if there is, go ahead and drop it in the Q&A, and we'll either try and answer it at the end or on a follow-up. Okay, so let's talk about a couple other things here before we wrap it up. So a lot of what we talked about is just how you connect. There's definitely some software tools that we have to help you through. So I'm just going to spend just a couple minutes on those at a really high level. If you're interested in additional follow-up on any of this, let us know in the chat or the QA, and we will look at maybe doing either a white paper or a webinar on it. But in terms of tools that we have, so we've got MX Security that manages our security products, including now the new on-cells. So this gives you the firewall management and all of those things, security policies in a centralized location across multiple sites. So this replaces the on-cell manager that we're using previously. The other change that's happened is this is now what we call a perpetual license. So it's a one-time purchase. So there's no annual fee or subscription. It's just one time per device. Another product that we have that hopefully many of you are familiar with is our MXView 1. This is our network management platform. This provides us with site level management. So you have a site that maybe has wireless and wired products running around, and you want to kind of see what's going on and all of that. This would be a way to give you some of that visibility, security management, things like that. We've got all these different views here. So it's something that definitely take a look at, and be happy to demo that for you. Another one that we have for some of our multi-site customers, and this is fairly new, you may not have seen this before. This is our MXView 1 Central Manager. This allows you to take multiple sites at the MXView 1 level and aggregate them together into like a single pane of glass reporting structure. It gives you a bunch of other advantages from a licensing and administrative access right and control perspective. So again, if you are a multi-site distributed type of environment, this is something else that is great to be able to take a look at. Finally, just wanted to, since this is a wireless webinar, we do have what we call our MXView wireless add-on. And it is an add-on to MXView that improves the wireless capabilities of MXView 1. And it basically has 5 kind of functions. It gives you dynamic topology. So this gives you, for wireless Wi-Fi clients, almost real-time view of what's going on in your site in terms of where things are going, where they are relative to one another. You can put a map of your facility down as well if you want to use that as a way to map things. Probably my favorite feature is this roaming playback. Think of this as the black box for Wi-Fi. So I think it records, I think 2 weeks of data. And what you can do is you can go back and at any point in time, kind of get an idea of what was going on. Where was the device? What did the environment look like? For those of you that have deployed in trouble shot networks that are Wi-Fi, know that they're really difficult because they're not as deterministic. They're some of the problems are intermittent. So when it goes down, you might not be able to see what's going on. This is a way to give you some additional telemetry of what's going on. You obviously get a dashboard of the different wireless devices, inventory, and the main dashboard. This is kind of what it looks like. You've got your dynamic topology map here shown in the middle. You've got your roaming playback option that you can pull down from the wireless menu to kind of see what the playback looks like over time. You can click on an icon here to get the device dashboard of the device itself. You can pull down the device summary report, as well as get the main dashboard that has like all of the widgets. Okay, so I know I went through that kind of fast. If you do have any questions about the network management, would like to see additional webinars or white papers, let us know. There's a couple poll questions that we wanted to ask you guys before we summarized and close the meeting. So what we'd like to know is, okay, now that you've kind of seen what different technologies that we're starting to see and offer, are there any now that you're kind of interested in or didn't know about before today's presentation that you'd like to either get more information, see us do some white papers or webinars? If you could just click any that apply, this will help us in terms of what kind of content we should develop in the future to try and meet the needs of our partners and customers. So if you guys can just take a second and enter that in for us, we'd really appreciate that. All right. Okay, so it looks like Wi-Fi and public and private cellular are the winners. Okay, so definitely if you guys have a preference, webinar, white paper, let us know. But that's super helpful. So thank you for providing that feedback. We've got one more question that we'd like to ask you guys. And that's really if, after this presentation, again, we've covered a lot of things at kind of a high level. If you'd be interested in hearing some more about a particular technology or talking to us about some trends or any of those other things, and you'd like to be contacted, definitely let us know. We'd love to hear from you. So definitely go ahead and if you could respond to that poll question. James, you can let me know when you've got that, and we'll close it up here.
Yeah, I'm actually not able to serve that up at the moment, but we can move on to the Q&A section first.
Okay. So just let me do a summary here, and then we'll kind of open it up for some of the Q&As just to end the webinar portion of it. So the OT networks are evolving. Everything needs to be connected. And I think a lot of our customers, whether they know it yet or not, are going to need to be AI ready. So that's something that I think is an opportunity for all of us to either help our customers or our customers benefit from that. There's a lot of different applications out there, and there's not kind of a one size fits all from, again, some of the use cases that we went through. There may be multiple solutions where both Wi-Fi and or private public cellular may be an option, depending on the customer's environment and what their budgets look like. So we're definitely here to help you there. And then I think the last portion of it is really having the visibility, being able to secure these networks, manage the networks are becoming more and more important as we're connecting more and more things. And this is an area that we're going to continue to invest in our tools to help you do some of that. So with that, let's move on to James. You want to go to the Q&A or did you want to do the poll?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do the Q&A first.
Okay. So I think we've got some questions that I see in the Q&A section here. So let me see if I can address some of these here. So I believe that the 40, okay, so we have a question here about what spectrum band is used for Canada. I believe that it's the same as the US where it's band 48, but let me double check that and we will get back to you specifically, Jose, and let everybody know. We had an anonymous question around, is MX security price of $99 per device, or can it be used with multiple devices? Okay, so good question. So MX Security, the software is essentially, think of it as free. You can load it on whatever it is that you want. But in terms of how we monetize it, it's based on the number of security devices or routers that you're managing. So you'd have to spend the MSRP of $100. If you've got 10 on cells that you wanted to manage, it would be a one-time purchase of $100 times 10 to be able to get the licenses for MX Security to be able to manage those. But again, it's a one-time license, and again, with all the different things you can automate, I think it's probably worth the price of admission. Okay, so we've got a question on MX View. I'm going to assume it's MX View 1, not MX View, because the answer is different. MX View, the older version, cannot run on Linux, not natively at least. MX View 1, which is the new version of MX View, does have a Linux variation that you can run both in the demo trial mode or standalone license. MX Security is not an application. It's basically, think of it as a VM. So it can run on a lot of different environments. It's not installed like an application. So that's architecturally something that we did differently. So hopefully that helps. Does Moxa
Marty,
Yes.
before you move on to the next question, let me just serve up this poll for everybody there in case they wanted to get contacted. So I'll go ahead and put that on the screen right now. And if you guys would like a Moxa expert to contact you afterward, talk about Moxa wireless technology, go ahead and let us know here.
Yes, like I said, we covered a lot of different things. There's a lot of good questions in the chat. This is something, again, that you're interested in. Of anything that we covered, I know I went kind of fast and high level, definitely let us know. We'd be happy to follow up with you and probably learn some things at the same time, because again, this is new for a lot of us. Some of these are emerging technologies. James, let me know when you've got most of the respondents in, and then we'll go back to the Q&A when you're ready.
Yeah, I think I'll just leave that on the screen for now, as there's still some people responding, but we could continue on some of the questions that came in earlier.
Okay, I'm going through. We got a lot here. So, okay, so Ted is asking, does Moxa plan on doing any wireless in the 900 to 868 megahertz band? So yes, we do have product plans to do something in a lower band. It's kind of a roadmap thing. So I can't go into a lot of details, but there is something that is in the works under development right now. Jose asked the question on the 1510 working in Canada. I think, again, that's kind of related to the N48 band being used in Canada as well. I believe so, but let us just double check that and get back to you. It looks like we've got an anonymous question on explain Open RAN benefits again. Okay, so that's a great question. Let me go back to this slide here, I guess. No, actually, let's do this one. So the benefits of Open RAN is that, okay, before Open RAN devices were available, you would basically have to go buy, and I don't even know how much they cost. One of the commercial cell towers that like AT&T, Verizon use for their 5G deployments around like a city, right? Which is probably way more capacity than you need if you're just going to cover like a small factory floor or something like that, and you're not trying to light up a whole city. So that would be like this use case here where they're having to buy all of it themselves and they're having to buy this really expensive. Think of the Open RAN as the AP that the private 5G device connects to, right? And that would have come from, let's say, an Ericsson or Nokia or something like that. You spent tons of money doing that. The other option was to just use the cellular company's tower that's already in place and they just sell time back to you, which can be expensive in terms of recurring revenue costs. So the advantage of the Open RAN is that think of it as like a mini cell tower. So it's a lot smaller and less expensive from a lot of different vendors here. A lot of these guys are ODMs in Taiwan, so they're building these things a lot less expensively than, let's say, a Nokia or Ericsson or something like that. And then you can basically buy it yourself, install it out in your warehouse or facility that you're covering. You just need a few of these. You still have to connect back to a central provider for the main network, but you basically own all of this for a lot less money. And that's really what we're seeing as, like I said, I think every single POC that we have going on right now globally is using some Open RAN company's product. It may not even be one of these, it may be somebody else's, but they're not connecting to your traditional cell tower. So hopefully that, I'm not sure, we can't follow up with you since you're anonymous, but hopefully that answered your question. Do we have any experience of applications on electrical distribution? That's kind of a open-ended question, Jose. Maybe we can contact you offline, and we do have a lot. I'm not sure exactly what you're looking for, so maybe you could clarify that in the chat. Otherwise, we'll try and contact you. Evie, vision diagrams, the Moxa products are great to share with your sales team. Okay, that's great feedback. We also saw the comment on the white paper, so that's awesome. Thank you, Evie. Enrique, what kind of security does it have for remote access? So Enrique, I'm not sure what you're referring to. I'm going to assume you're talking about the on-cell. The on-cell does have VPN, IPsec capability. All of our network management is using encrypted traffic for management as well. So this is something that we definitely take very seriously. On the private 5G side, I don't believe there's any VPN in that product because, again, it's your own network. So hopefully that answers your question. If it doesn't, drop us a note and we'll come back. Let's say, Mr. Shen, I'm OT and I'm not very knowledgeable about networking. Do we have some training on this? We do, it's internal, but again, this is something that you're interested in. We definitely can do another webinar or something. So maybe we'll reach out to you with a follow-up on that. Otherwise, yes, I could do something in more detail. Let's see. Can MX View map only Moxa equipment or others? So Robert, your question is, do we support third parties? So the Moxa MX View 1 is basically an SNMP manager. So if it supports SNMP, we can manage it. You also can import if, let's say, again, it was like a Cisco Catalyst that has a private MIB, you can import the private MIB into MXP1 and access those capabilities as well. So I think we got through most of the questions. I know I'm at the stopping point. Appreciate all the questions and feedback, guys. I know we went through a lot of stuff here. Hopefully this was helpful. James, any parting comments for you?
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks, Marty. All right, so everyone, thank you so much again for joining our webinar for the evolution of industrial wireless networking. We will send a follow-up email with a link to the recording so that you can revisit any of the topics that we covered at your convenience. Once this Zoom session ends, there will be a short survey, and we would appreciate it if you could give your feedback on today's webinar. Also, I wanted to give a huge thank you to you again, Marty, for an information-packed webinar. As always, if you need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Have a good one, everyone.
Thank you.